Davis. A very pleasant good afternoon to you from the Eastern Caribbean's powerhouse, Vaughan Radio. I'm Webbo Herbert, and we're here today to start the series of interviews with the candidates, the leader of the parties, respective parties, who will be contesting the next federal elections for St. Kitts and Nevis, scheduled to be held this Friday, August 5th, 2022. All of the leaders of the parties have been invited to participate in this series of interviews. The participants who agreed, or those leaders who agreed to participate, are the leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement, Premier Mark Brantley; the leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge; the leader of the Morals Restoration Movement, MRM, Mr. Samuel Keynes. Those are the leaders who have agreed to participate. In just under 5 minutes, we will be doing our first interview with the Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Brantley, leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement. Tomorrow, Thursday, the 4th, 10 a.m., will be the leader of the Morals Restoration Movement, MRM, Samuel Keynes. On that said day, Thursday, the 4th of August, at 1 p.m., the leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge. Each interview will be for a duration of 90 minutes. Each candidate will be allowed the first 20 minutes, approximately, to make their case to you, the voter, uninterrupted. Following that, the host will ask of each candidate some questions which we think are the concerns, some of the concerns that we have garnered from you, the voter, over a period of time. Also, the candidate will have 2 minutes in which to answer each question, and 1 minute if there is a follow-up. We kindly ask that they stay within the specific time allocated, as we have a number of areas to cover. And most importantly, we think within the last 30 minutes, you, the voter, will have the opportunity to call in and 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700 to ask of the candidate your question, or make a comment, or make a suggestion. Similarly, we ask you, the caller, to be brief but forceful with your point, your question, or your comment, so that we can accommodate as many of you as is possible. As usual, we ask only that you respect yourselves and respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem not within our broadcast standards. As you are aware, for the life of Vaughan Radio, beginning in 1988, we have sought to give all political parties and candidates a similar opportunity. Over the years, most have accepted and participated, some have not. One of the things that we specify and made clear, especially for this time around, was that we will absolutely not entertain any personal insults, character assassinations, etc. We deem it very important, and we do understand that everything has its place, but we do understand that even if not all, some of the voters are very interested in the issues at hand, which will affect going forward the very lives of each and every person in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. We thank very much those persons who have agreed to participate, and we wish everyone all the very best during these interviews, and especially the voter who may find the information necessary as you make that critical decision come Friday, August 5th. Finally, for this opening comment, I would like to just take a moment out to pay homage to the late Premier Vance Amory, who left us earlier this year. And I'd like to make this comment at this particular time, because when we started in 1988, Mr. Amory was one of the first persons who participated in these discussions, and hence, I would say, gave encouragement to others to do so. And we thank him very much, even though he has departed, for his contribution to what we are doing here today. Now, we, as I said, have afforded 90 minutes for this discussion, and so the opening comments that I made will not be counted as a part of the 90 minutes. We now begin with the Premier of Nevis and the leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement, the Honorable Mark Brantley. Mr. Brantley, welcome, and thank you for accepting our invitation to be a part of this series of interview discussions.
Webbo, thank you very much, and I am, as always, delighted to be here, and certainly delighted to be in your company here on VON Radio. VON Radio is widely listened to. It is a huge platform here in the Federation, and widely listened to as well by members of our family in the diaspora. And so I say good afternoon to everyone, and I look forward very much to the discussion. Now, you did say that we would have 20 minutes. I don't know if you want me to start now, or you'll interject and let me know when that time starts.
The 20 minutes start now.
Webbo, I believe that this election that will happen on August 5th, 2022, a day that I have said is Freedom Day in our country, that it is perhaps the most critical and most consequential election that our people will be asked to exercise their franchise in. It is for me as the leader of the CCM to encourage all of us to go out and vote. The right to vote is a sacred right, and I encourage all to go out and exercise their franchise. Of course, it is a contest. It is a contest of ideas, it is a contest of philosophy, and it is a contest of leadership. And I am persuaded that the leadership that is offered by the Concerned Citizens Movement is far and away the best on offer on the island of Nevis in this election. We are offering Webbo leadership that we can trust. Leadership that has demonstrated through difficult times its mettle. Leadership that, as I like to say, is old enough to know, but yet still young enough to do. We have the energy, we have the momentum, and I believe we have the ideas and the love of country, which are critical for effective leadership on this, the island of Nevis, and by extension, the wider Federation. Now, why is it so important in this election? I think we all know why we are here. And when all the sparring and the jabs and the back and forth is over, it still comes down to a critical question of what we want for our country. We have seen the dangerous path on which some would wish to take us. We have seen the comments and heard the comments from Dr. Timothy Harris on St. Kitts, who has declared that every dollar that comes to Nevis is $1 less for St. Kitts, who has declared that the people of Nevis want to use St. Kitts and only want St. Kitts for its money. This money, let us remember, is money that is derived from the negotiation of our national asset, the St. Kitts and Nevis passport. And this team unity construct that so many of us spent so much time and so much energy putting into place, so many of us invested in, has come to a premature end because of the avarice, because of the desire of one individual to hold on to power at all cost. And that for us has been the foundation of the problem that we have endured. We in the CCM, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, and I, we went to Bastia to represent the people of Nevis. We have never lost sight of why people voted for us in 2015 initially, and then again in 2020. And we are, as we were reminded at the start of this program, the party of the greats, the party of people like the Venerable Vance Winkworth Amory, the Venerable Malcolm Gishard, and persons such as those who are stalwarts in Nevis and who would have served well. We pay homage to them. But the party that they founded, a party that is now over 30 years old, has always consistently stood for the people of Nevis. Through thick and thin, through good and bad, we have always demonstrated leadership that our people can trust. And that is what we demonstrated in St. Kitts. Because after years of negotiations and years of efforts at compromise, and in the case of the Honorable Eric Evelyn and the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, less than 2 years in their case, we realized that Timothy Harris was on a path that was a path to destruction for this country. And that what was afoot was something that was alien to all that we hold dear in our democracy. And that the people of Nevis were being left outside to look in terms of what was happening in their country, being deprived of their fair share and being deprived of the full fruits of their citizenship. Whether it is the CBI proceeds, where through an investigative team we were able to unearth that in the past 12 years that program has earned $5.3 billion, of which the people of Nevis have only received $400 million. We have received a mere 7% when St. Kitts has kept 93%, and when, of course, we know that Nevis accounts for nearly 30% of the national population. We have said that these things are wrong. When we look at the peace program, a program that was designed to divert young persons and others from a path that was destructive to a path of national development where they can make a full contribution to the development of St. Kitts and Nevis. And we see that by last count there were over 1,225 persons on that program, with only 71 on Nevis. When we see that on Nevis, the youngsters were told that no women could be allowed on the program, but in St. Kitts, we are advised that even grandparents find themselves on this program. Men, women, some overseas, some who are in prison, all are afforded the opportunity from this program. Those in Nevis are denied. The youngsters in Nevis were told they had to choose. They could not be on the peace program and also on the STEP program. Yet, their counterparts in St. Kitts are sometimes on the peace program, the STEP program, and the PAP program, all three. We look at the STEP program, and we see how this skills program was designed and what it was intended to do. Again, well over 5,000 STEP workers, just about 300 on Nevis. Every effort to add persons in Nevis is met with the same resistance. The program is full and no new persons can be added. But that rule, you see, only applies to Nevis, because in St. Kitts people are added regularly. We look at the Poverty Alleviation Program, which is designed to supplement the income of those households that are earning less than $3,000 a month. Again, well over 6,000 households are benefiting. On Nevis, just 701 households benefit from that program. I say these things because they are demonstrative of what we have described as the continued effort to treat the people of Nevis as if we were less than. And so one ought not to be surprised when Prime Minister Harris would make his assertions that somehow the people of Nevis are using the people of St. Kitts, because we are not being perceived as brothers and sisters, being asked to press on and to press on together, to put our collective shoulders to the wheel for national development. Instead, we are being set apart and set against each other. A level of divisiveness that we have not seen in recent times in our country. In fact, a level of divisiveness that the very essence and core principles of team unity were designed to address. And that is why I am proud of the CCM team. Because let us reflect that in 2015, when we campaigned against the then Labour NRP administration in Bastia that had treated the people of Nevis in similar fashion. They had bounced our checks, let us remember. Nevis then, if it got a pittance from the Citizenship by Investment Program by way of loan. In fact, I believe it is a matter of national disgrace and a terrible gaping wound to the spirit of the Nevisian people that our airport, the Vance Amri International Airport, was mortgaged by the NRP to the SIDF in exchange for some $4 million. I am proud that we in the CCM stood up under the leadership of Vance Amri against that. And some may have thought that upon getting into government in Bastia, that fight would have stopped. But that is not in the DNA of CCM. CCM will always stand up and will always fight for the people of Nevis and by extension the people of our nation. We will do that because we think that all of us, whether we are born in St. Kitts or in Nevis, whether our place of birth is Molyneux or Montpellier, it ought not to matter. We ought to be given equal treatment and be entitled to enjoy the full fruits of our citizenship. And that, ladies and gentlemen, has been our simple position. But you will be surprised that that position has caused fear, apprehension, trepidation, and has even caused resentment in some quarters. The view from some is how dare Nevisians demand their fair share. We have been castigated as greedy, as ungrateful, and all manner has been said about us, which begs the question, if we are receiving a mere 7%, and you are accepting 93% over in St. Kitts, yet we are the ones who are said to be greedy, because we have pointed out that that is not good enough. Fair share, which is our argument in this campaign, and which we think ought to be the argument of every Nevisian who loves Nevis. Fair share is not an anti-St. Kitts argument. To the contrary, it is saying that everybody in our country, Kittitians and Nevisians, and all who are privileged to call our country their home, should have equal opportunity in this country that we love so much. They should have access to what is available in this country. And the people of Nevis, or who happen to live on the island of Nevis, should not be relegated to the back of the bus simply because they are on the island of Nevis rather than on St. Kitts. It must be a matter of regret for all of us that in a time of rising prices of oil and the corresponding shocks in terms of rising cost of electricity, that the people of St. Kitts do not pay a fuel surcharge, but the people of Nevis are forced to pay it. Why, might you ask? Again, because in St. Kitts, the Citizenship by Investment Program is used to subsidize electricity so that the people there are relieved of the burden of the cruel fuel surcharge. In Nevis, we have no choice but to seek to pass on most of that to the consumer, because we have not the benefit of that buffer as our brothers and sisters in St. Kitts have. So when we talk about fair share, we're talking about an opportunity for the people of Nevis to be in the same position as their brothers and sisters on St. Kitts. And that is why when I make this appeal, I say to our brothers and sisters in St. Kitts that you too ought to be a part of this insistence that all of us are treated equitably, all of us are treated equally. Because when any one of us is oppressed, all of us are oppressed. We, ladies and gentlemen, are making a simple but clear case on the island of Nevis that the CCM team that we have assembled, led at this time in our history by me, but comprising the Honorable Eric Evelyn and the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, is by far the best team that is available in this election. Why do I say that? I say that because we have the necessary experience. We have experience at the level of the NIA, but we also have experience at the federal level. The Honorable Alexis Jeffers, in less than 2 years at the federal level, has revolutionized agriculture in the Federation. He has ensured that Bayford Farm in St. Kitts and Foy's have been rekindled and reopened. He introduced a night market concept in St. Kitts. He has also ensured that St. Kitts joins the thrust for greater food security by deploying technology such as shade house technology for growing food. In fact, so efficacious and effective he has been that in St. Kitts he was able to secure shade houses, and 6 farmers in Nevis benefited from shade houses for free, valued at over $60,000 each. In the case of the Honorable Eric Evelyn, he has in less than 2 years become a champion for the environment. We saw this young man from Hanley's Road on the stage, the global stage in Glasgow, Scotland, and how he commanded the stage to such an extent that those who organized asked him to come back and to speak in Monaco as well. Eric is a real deal, someone who's loved by all and someone who loves all. We have said that based on what we have seen in that very narrow window, and let me remind us that this was during COVID, that these 2 gentlemen have what it takes to continue to represent the people of Nevis and the wider Federation with aplomb. And then, as the leader, I have been the foreign minister of this country for 7 years. In fact, we were dismissed on the 10th of May by Prime Minister Harris. Not because of any wrongdoing, not because of failing to do our work. We were dismissed because we stood up on principle for the people of Nevis. And if that is the reason for us to perish, then I perish gladly, because the people of Nevis matter. And that is why we were dismissed, because no one could look at us and say we did not perform. As foreign minister, I ensured that this country expanded its range of diplomatic relations, particularly with Mother Africa. I ensured that we expanded our visa waiver network to the point where our passport now is the most powerful in all of our Caribbean region. I repaired relations with Canada and the United States and ensured that I maintained good relations with our other partners in the UK and the European Union. But the best testament to my term as foreign minister, this country in 7 years did not have one single scandal associated with our diplomacy. No one in good conscience could look at us and say we did not perform for the benefit of our country. And that's why we're asking our people to send us back to Bastia and to give us the possibility and that opportunity to continue the critical work that we started. The work that was cut short, not for lack of performance, the work that was cut short because one man decided that he wanted absolute power at all cost. And so we come to the people in Nevis 9, Nevis 10, and Nevis 11. And we ask for your support. We ask you to send the team to Bastia that is best equipped and has demonstrated a track record of excellence. A team that you can trust, a team that you know will stand up for Nevis, because we have done so in government and out of government. Many would have gone to St. Kitts and done whatever they thought was necessary in order to maintain their position. We said no. That having sought to fix team unity, having sought to get a new course and a new path, and realizing that the leadership, the captain of the ship, was more prepared to sink the ship than to set it aright, we decided to abandon ship. And so here we are, and we have come back to our people with clean hands and clean hearts, willing to serve. And that is why I'm happy to be here today to take questions, to respond to concerns, because I believe that this election, like every election, is about leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Brantley. You indicated in your opening statement that you should be sent back to Bastia in the federal parliament, and you also made reference to the Nevis Island administration. Not everyone will understand the construct, or the difference? What is the difference, therefore, between a local representative in the Nevis Island administration and a federal representative in Bastia? Now, having explained that, how would you explain your performance as a federal minister, and not only your performance, your team's performance as a federal minister, against the backdrop that your critics have said for 7 years you represented at the federal level and you did and brought back nothing?
Well, I think the critics, Webbo, are critics because they criticize. That is what they do. That, in many respects, is perhaps their calling. That is their job. You and I will know that it is very easy to sit in a pavilion and critique every shot that is played on the field. But to ask you to go onto the field of play, to engage, that now is a different thing. And we are reminded that many who sit on the sidelines have the best ideas. They understand more than those who are in the midst of doing what needs to be done, but they never do it, and they never offer themselves to do it. I would ask our people to look critically, because, as I said, an election is a contest. The NRP that is coming up against us in Nevis has not yet demonstrated the fortitude to stand up for the people of Nevis. They had a chance, so they have a record that we can look to. It is not to say that they are a new party just formed. No, they have a record, and when we look at that record in Bastia, we have Patrice Nisbet as a representative standing up and saying to all the world that Nevis does not need anything. We have a record of mortgaging the Van Samry Airport in exchange for loans, even while they were part of the federal cabinet. And we have a record, Mr. Herbert, of the checks of our public servants in Nevis being bounced. Those are, in my view, most treasonous actions against the people of Nevis. And so, you ask about the difference. Local elections under our constitution, the NIA manages the affairs of Nevis. The federal government, which has its seat in Bastia, is headed by a prime minister. The NIA is headed by a premier. And on St. Kitts, of course, the people of Nevis can contribute 3 seats. 9, 10, and 11. The people of Nevis have continuously demonstrated their confidence in the CCM at the federal level.
And what would you say that at the federal level you have achieved?
Well, Webbo, it is ironic that we are told we have achieved nothing, and then they turn around and ask us what you all did with the 400 million you got. When you look at that question, you say, oh, well, what was it you're asking about receiving 400 million and what happened to it? And at the same time, you say that nothing was achieved because, again, there's a record. And the record will show that under the NRP, the only proceeds we got from this federal arrangement were by way of loan. Under the CCM, we were able to receive some $400 million that has been put to good use in this country. Wherever when we look at all the projects that have been done here, the Mondo Track, an investment in our youth. Many take that for granted. Recall, if you will, that before the Mondo Track, our children were running at the ETW Park on grass. And if the rains were not coming, they were probably running on dirt. And we were continually asking them to do more, to then go to St. Kitts to a proper facility to compete against their counterparts. I was very proud this year when the Charlestown Primary School emerged champions of the first ever relay competition. And I believe that that investment, where they can now train on a proper facility, was to their benefit. We look, Webbo, at the water taxi pier and reflect that over the music festival weekend, over 8,400 people traversed the waters back and forth. We reflect that that was an investment in our local water taxi operators, an industry which is 100% Division owned at this point in time.
So if we were to accept your argument that you cannot have it both ways, that you brought nothing and then still argue that you got $400 million.
But Webbo, that...
If we were to accept that,
Yes.
how then would you explain that the Prime Minister, Harris, who was at the Prime Minister when you got that $400 million,
Yes.
which, by the way, he agreed that you got $400 million.
Yes.
But the argument goes on further and said, well, in fact, if you got it, you wasted it.
Well, but again, it's a convenient argument, because I was about to say, let us look at all the projects. Let us look at the Newcastle Police and Fire Station, which had been abandoned for years, which is not a responsibility of the NIA. It is a federal responsibility as part of the architecture and infrastructure of national security. Let us look at the water taxi pier that I've commented on. Let us look at the Mondo track. Let us look at the new Treasury building in Charlestown. The improvements at Vance Amry Airport, at the Vance Amry Tower. The equipment that we bought for NASPA. Let us look at the Joycean Library Primary School. The revolution that we have seen in housing on Nevis. The roads, Webbo, that we now take for granted, that were not so. Hanley's Road, Brazier's, Brownhill, Shaw's Road, the Island Main Road. Let us look at what's happening in Bath and what is happening in Butlers. Housing. I mentioned housing, but I think it's important to mention that currently this government has housing happening simultaneously for the first time in our history in Garner's, in Madden's, in Rice's, in Craddock Road, in Hamilton, in Nisbet Settlement, and in Cherry Gardens. 7 developments happening at once under this government. When we look at the entire gamut and recognize that there were 2 years in this country, because many people in this debate forget that there was something called a global pandemic of COVID-19. When this country was shut down, borders were closed. Webbo, in our living memory, we have no comparison. No premier, no leader in this world has ever had to deal with that, because the last pandemic that we are told was the influenza pandemic of 1918.
And therefore, you will say that to us, you have listed a number of things that you've done with the $400 million.
And I've only scratched the surface.
But yet they say that the hospital is unfinished. They're paying too much for electricity. They should have been, paying less, and other stuff.
Well, the hospital is unfinished because it's a significant project, but we've also explained what has happened at the hospital. And when we're looking at a significant infrastructural development such as that, we've given update after update. Every month I have gone to my press conference and that question has been asked. And I am to say that other than the hospital, which is proceeding apace, all the other projects that we have undertaken are done and have been put into use. And that is what we committed to. Webbo, many people look at this question of $400 million. $400 million came in tranches of $45 million or thereabouts per month over the last 7-year period. It did not come at once, let us make that clear. But when we look at that and we reflect that in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 2021, there were double salaries that were paid from that $400 million. When we reflect that included in that figure are salaries and wages for the island of Nevis, and when we look at the numbers, Webbo, salaries and wages per month in Nevis is almost $9 million. So if you're getting $3.75 million a month and paying out almost $9 million in salaries and wages, it tells you that you haven't even scratched the surface. So when people start to say, well, where did this money go? I say, well, look at all the projects. And look at the fact that in the past 2 years, when our economy was closed down, our hotel sector was closed, and thousands of people were out of work, that in this island, not one public servant was fired. Not one. And every public servant, every pensioner, every worker for our statutory corporations, be it NEVLEC, be it NASPA, be it Solid Waste, all of them, Webbo, were paid on time and in full. And that, I think, is often goes unnoticed, because some people are so caught up in, as you say, doing their job, which is to criticize. Government is serious business. And I keep saying, in a time that we now exist, when we're now fighting our way out of this pandemic, we're looking now to the future. We understand that there's some challenges ahead. but serious times demand serious attention from serious people.
In explaining
Yes.
the roles that yourself and your other two members from Nevis over the past, let's say, 2 years, since you've been the leader then, in Bastia at the federal level, you explained that Nevis has 3 representatives. There are a total of 11
Yes.
representatives in the parliament. And therefore, if you match 3 against 11, it would mean that something has to happen in terms of a streak of good luck for you to be in a real strong position, to, you know, to wield the hands of power, if you will. One of your opponents, you have 2 opponents for number 9, going up against you for the federal seat. One of your opponents, Dr. Brantley, is on the record as suggesting or saying that were she to win that seat and be the representative rather than you, she will not accept any federal portfolio. Will you, if you are offered the opportunity, if you're given the opportunity, if the opportunity arises, let me put it that way, will you be willing to take on the mantle of Prime Minister?
Well, that is and has always been a difficult question. Before I get to that and a direct response, let me just say that the comment I made prior to your question, that we live in serious times and serious times demand serious attention from serious people. Anybody running and asking our people to vote for them, but tell them, if you vote for me, I don't really want the job. I don't want the work. Because what does the work entail? It means that you must be prepared to go and get a portfolio so that you can do the necessary work for the people of Nevis. Now, on this issue of Prime Minister, the issue keeps popping up. And I am to say, first of all, that any citizen of this country who contests an election should and ought to be qualified to be Prime Minister if the people decide that they want to put them in that position. We all understand, based on the arithmetic that you just laid out, that Nevis only has 3 seats, and so it is impossible, as currently built out in terms of the infrastructure of St. Kitts and Nevis, the political infrastructure, for any party in Nevis to form a federal government on its own. It therefore means that political parties in Nevis must, whether you call it good luck or whatever expression you wish to use, they must await the outcome in St. Kitts to determine whether or not they will be part and parcel of a government in Bastia. I believe that the issue of Prime Minister comes down to one of confidence. It comes down to one of who the parties that are elected have the confidence in to select in that role as Prime Minister. Speaking for Mark Brantley, I have said quite clearly that my lot lies with the people of Nevis, that I have not harbored any ambition to be Prime Minister, but I am prepared to work and to undertake the necessary work on behalf not only of the people of Nevis but on behalf of the Federation. And I believe, Webbo, that my track record has demonstrated that I have brought tangible benefits. You know, one of the reasons why this question of fair share in the CBI hurts me and hurts Nevision so much, that the appeal of our passport is in large measure due to the fact that through my efforts and the team that I led at Foreign Affairs, we have made our passport the #1 in the region. Other countries involved in citizenship by investment in our region, Antigua, Barbuda, Dominica, St. Lucia, Grenada, cannot boast that. We can. And that is one of the big factors, the big draws. And so we are saying, on the one hand, here's a new vision. Walk in the corridors of the world, building up the reputation of our country, building up the power of our passport. Here's a petition in the Prime Minister, negotiating that passport in exchange for money. And then he turns around and he says to the people of Nevis, we are sorry, but you must accept the crumbs from the table. I am saying that we need to be able to go and do the work. Whatever the label, whatever the title, the work is what ultimately matters, and that is what I'm committed to.
And if the electorate were to agree with you on August 5th and send you and your team again to represent, you obviously are arguing that you need the fair share.
Absolutely.
For Nevis. Were you to be successful in getting the fair share the next time around, what do you intend? Don't want the details, all the details, line by line. What do you intend to do with the fair share?
Webbo, we cannot develop Nevis without money. We cannot develop the island without the necessary resources. We have, for example, the plan to open up the south coast of Nevis by doing a highway from Long Point by the port all the way around to Gingerland. We have thousands of unused acres of land there that is ripe for development. We have long promised our young people will separate the sixth form from the CSS to give them their own facility, a facility of further education. We want more scholarships for training for our young people. We want to be able to equip our hospital so that it becomes one of the top facilities in our region, state-of-the-art facility. We want Webbo to build out our road network, enhance our water supply, improve our health care. And we want, it may not be attractive to some, to pay down our debt and to put some money in the bank for a rainy day. We have plans for the resources that should have come to us. If the people of Nevis had received what was due to them from the Citizenship by Investment program, we would have received some $1.35 billion. Instead of that, we received $400 million and were told, be satisfied with that. And to demand more is to be greedy. So we have a number of plans that we have set out to provide a better life for our people. We have said that we want our own version of the peace program in Nevis, our own skills training programs in Nevis through STEP and through TVET. We want our own assistance income support arrangements in Nevis. But the difference, Webbo, that they will be designed in Nevis, run by Nevisians, for Nevisians. Because we are not persuaded that anybody can sit in Bastille and determines who is in need on the island of Nevis and who needs an intervention. And so this is a commitment that we have made to our people, that this CCM, which has a track record of standing up for Nevisians, will put in place these necessary and critical pieces of infrastructure, social and physical, to benefit our people.
Against that backdrop then, with planning how you will spend the funds, were you to get it, do you have any arrangement in 2015 when you got into the team unity to construct, by way of just background, under the leadership of your then leader Van Semwing, you were part of that team.
Yes.
You had an arrangement under a heading called the Charlestown Accord.
Absolutely.
And it is by that content in which you, who enforced it when you then became the leader, and then you departed once it was broken.
Absolutely.
That was your case. Do you, going into this election, have any arrangement with any group or groups to have that, were you to be successful, of course, to have that arrangement? First of all, do you have any arrangement to any group or groups so that that desire can be effectuated?
Well, the short answer is yes, because we have been quite public and quite vocal with the view that the party in St. Kitts, that in our view best fits the ideals of the CCM, and the party that through its leadership has come forward and say that they support Nevis being able to access the full fruits that are due to Nevis and be able to access the fair share that is due to Nevis, has been the People's Action Movement. And so we have said that we have seen them in cabinet with us. Sean Richards, the leader of PAM, is someone who I am of the view is trustworthy. His word thus far in relation to me has been his bond, And we have publicly said that we would look for an alignment with the People's Action Movement on St. Kitts. Of course, Webbo, all of this depends on parties winning seats, because it is one thing for me to sit here today and postulate about what ifs and possibilities, but it really depends on what the people decide on the 5th of August.
And a lot of it, therefore, comes down to not only something written, because the Charleston Accord was in writing,
Yes.
but in execution, it comes to the person's credibility
And integrity.
and integrity that they involve.
Absolutely.
And you think that you have that in Sean Richards.
Thus far,
But what if one argues that Sean Richards too was a part of the same team unity, and the team or the members that left or resigned or were fired had the numbers?
they had the numbers, and I think that in context, and this will be a matter for the pundits and the historians, mistakes were made. I'm not going to resile from that, because somebody who had the least number of seats was elevated, because that was the promise that had been made. So we kept that promise to Timothy Harris. But then I think that the necessary checks and balances that I expected were not enforced and were not put in place. And that is why, after the horse had started to go down the track and you start to pull it back, it became more difficult, because Timothy Harris had become accustomed to doing what he wanted to do. And we eventually said no, that this could not continue. So I believe that there is some merit in that argument, that listen, what should have been done more effectively. But, Webbo, we go back to this fundamental question of integrity.
What instrument or what do you have to rely on in reference to Mr. Richards' commitment? In the first instance, in 2015, you had the Charleston Accord.
Yes.
What instrument, if any, other than his word, that you have from Mr. Richards in reference to following through with the fair share?
Well, I think there are a number of factors. One, Mr. Richards has made a public address in the last several weeks, which was specific to that issue, and was very vocal and direct that he supported this issue and that the people of Nevis were entitled. So I think that was important. More than that, I believe that the parties in St. Kitts understand, including my friend Sean Richards, that the CCM is coming to represent the people of Nevis, that we're coming to Bastille to ensure that all of the people of the country are treated fairly. And I believe he accepts and he understands that. Put differently, if we are in a position to form a government, the CCM, any coalition partner in Bastille must understand our ethos and our philosophy. And if they're not prepared to accept and do business with us, with that ethos and that philosophy, then we can't be in that government. And I believe that the Honorable Sean Richards and the People's Action Movement understand that, because we have said it quite emphatically to them within closed-door meetings, as I'm doing now, and as I have done before, to say it publicly. The last point,
Yes.
Webbo, just before you ask me a further question, is that at the end of the day, as we would have seen with Timothy Harris, writing something on a piece of paper, signing it in the most solemn fashion, may not mean a thing if you lack the necessary integrity, if you cannot be trusted. And the thing that at this point I am prepared to say about Sean Richards, and I emphasize at this point, is that he has demonstrated to me that he has integrity. And that for me is the critical component of any relationship, of any coalition, of any partnership. And since the people of Nevis would have to choose a partner in St. Kitts, we have said in the CCM that that is our preferred partner.
The other party or parties on St. Kitts, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, on the campaign trail, and the record shows, and you stated it yourself, that when they were in coalition with the NRP,
Yes.
they got nothing.
Yes.
They are perhaps of the view, maybe philosophically also, as Dr. Harris had stated, that maybe you shouldn't get that amount from the CBI. Then the other party is the PLP,
Yes.
which Dr. Harris himself heads. Would you say, therefore, that accessing or acquiring that fair share for Nevis, it's like walking maybe a very tight rope?
It is a tightrope because you're always forced to walk a tightrope when you're the smaller of the two islands. The experience with Barbudans and Antiguans, the experience with Tobagonians and Trinidadians is no different. But it gets back, Webbo, to the fundamental point that I've been trying to make during this interview. That is a question of leadership. It comes down to who people trust to go into the most difficult situation and to walk the tightest of ropes on their behalf. And I believe that this CCM team has demonstrated, we're not just talking, because we have opponents who, that's all we have so far is talk, because their record doesn't indicate anything that will suggest that they can walk the tightrope or they can lead. So we are talking about leadership that has been tried, that has been tested, leadership that came through the fire of a COVID-19 crisis, and we're still standing through the grace of God. Leadership that is on display for all who are prepared to look. Leadership, Webbo, that has not been tainted with any whiff of scandal. And I believe that these are qualities that the people of Nevis are looking for, qualities that they have in abundance in the CCM, and qualities that I'm hopeful will persuade them to vote on August 5th.
Just one final follow-up on the fair share, because you did state emphatically and at the beginning that you're running heavily on that platform.
Yes.
With fair share. And as you know, Mr. Brantley, we do a talk show here, you do a show as well. We do a talk show here and Vaughan Radio. And a caller on that same topic called in one evening and asked what I would call a very pertinent question. And I saved it for you. The caller asked the question, what if they were to support you once more? And you will go to St. Kitts and you have your plan in how to attain the full share. And what if you end up meeting similar obstacles? What then?
Well, I think the answer is simple. When you represent people, you represent them in good times and in bad. When you represent people and you're guided by principle, you stand up on your principle regardless of the circumstances. And that is why I made the point that when we were in opposition to Labour and NRP, we stood up and said Nevisians demanded their fair share. And when we got into government and we got some money, yes, but we did not get what was promised. We agitated and agitated until we realized that there was no point because there would be no movement. We stood up. I say that to say that our record in CCM has shown that we are prepared to confront those obstacles and to take such action as available to us through negotiation, through discussions at the internal level. But if we were to meet those obstacles that, like Timothy Harris, refused to move, then we will have to move them. And it is as simple as that. And I have been very clear that when the CCM comes, the people of Nevis are standing with us and we are standing with them. Not against the people of St. Kitts, but with the people of St. Kitts. Because I am persuaded that people of good intent, people of good mind, people of good character, people who love this country, want what is best for all of us. And I have had that sentiment, and I have been fortified in my own view by the number of Kittitians who call me on a daily basis. I'm praying for you. I agree that what has happened over the decades is wrong. It is time that all of our people are pressed into national service.
In terms of numbers, Mr. Brantley.
Yes.
And we got to move right along. The fair share number that you're looking at, you have mentioned 400 million.
Yes.
I noted here that you said it was an overall over 5 billion.
5.3 in a 12-year period.
Right. And you did some math, 93% approximately for St. Kitts, 7% for Nevis.
Yes.
When you're negotiating going forward, are you going to negotiate in looking back? You owe me this amount, why don't you pay that up and then pay what's going forward?
Webbo, I'm looking at going forward principally, because I think that what we need to do is to decide on the formula, and we had it under the Charleston Accord. It would have been 25%, 75%. Clearly, Timothy Harris departed from that, and we are where we are today. In terms of looking back, I think that will depend in large measure on what we find when we get there.
So speaking on
yes.
what you find, there is, as the campaign is heating up, some are predicting that the current Prime Minister may go on such a spendthrift, such a spending spree, that a Prime Minister Richards or Prime Minister Drew or Prime Minister any other, whoever becomes the Prime Minister, what if they were to say to you that they spend all of the money?
Well, if that is the point, then we are still one country. We will have to look, because that is why I say we don't know what we are going to find. It is quite clear that Timothy Harris is financing his campaign using the public purse in very interesting ways. I was in my constituency recently. A number of young men, they are telling me that they gave their name and account, and money is appearing miraculously on their account from St. Kitts.
They told you that?
They told me that.
And you believe that?
I not only believe, I have the evidence to show. So the reality is that various efforts are being used using the public purse. So whether it's a peace program, the STEP program, the PAP program, the roofing program, whatever is being used, the public purse is being used to curry favor with the electorate. So it is for us, Webbo, when we get there, and I say when, not if, when, for us to examine critically what is there, and for us to then make those kinds of determinations. But it is difficult to engage in hypothetical discussions when we do not know what we will meet, if anything. But I will say this, and I put St. Kitts and Nevis on fair warning, that if that evidence of the flagrant and willful wastage of the national purse to build the PLP is unearthed when we get into office, then we cannot continue with this thing about just talking. Action will have to be taken. And I'm very, very serious about that. That we must look at Development Bank. We must look at what has been happening in terms of the public purse. We must look at programs that were designed to help people to determine how it is those programs were abused. We must look at this $2.5 billion prison, Webbo. We must look at all of these, which are crying out for investigation and analysis, and come to the people and those responsible. And that is why I have said publicly to our public servants, do not allow politicians to corrupt you. Make sure that you stay true to your oath, and make sure that you can account for public money, because it will come a time when there must be reckoning. And that is the position that we have taken.
If we were to do an audit on the last 50 minutes that we have spent here, I think we'll find that you spent quite a bit of your time on emphasizing the importance of leadership in this particular construct and context, and integrity. You would agree with that?
Yes, I would.
Hence, you think, therefore, that a person such as yourself and all the other candidates putting up themselves, offering up themselves to represent the electorate, they should be examined in terms of their records, their character, and their integrity.
I believe, Webbo, that is critical.
Okay. You have referenced an investigation which took place in the U.S. Virgin Islands some years ago and involved your opponent, the leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge, who was at the head of the Coastal Zone Management Department in St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And in that investigation, you pointed out that a number of persons were convicted for criminal, you put it locally, you said, they said embezzling, and you said stealing.
Yes.
I'm asking you two questions, put them in one, so I'm going to allow you twice the time so that you can answer both. You also have asked and continue to ask Dr. Danielle Hodge to explain her role and how she was involved in it. And again, your opponents and your critics say that you're mounting a smear campaign. On the contrary, in the Nevis Island administration, Prime Minister Harris released information that one of your ministers of public works, Mr. Brand, applied for a project under the Citizens by Investment program, and indicated Dr. Hodge, as leader of the Nevis Reformation Party, tied you to it, suggesting that you ought to have brought it to the fore, the integrity in public life. You ought to have been disclosed. And not only demanded that your minister resign, but held you accountable as well in that sphere. Both situations, fair game?
Webbo, this is not Sunday school. This is politics. This is public life. You or I may get away with certain things in our private life, but the minute that we go and we seek to involve ourselves in public life, what is public life about? What is politics about? When I go to the people of Brownhill, I go to the people of Church Ground, Cox, Coal Hill, the people of Charlestown, people of Bath, in constituency number 9, what am I saying to them? I'm saying to them, repose your trust and confidence in me. It is an awesome thing that you're asking of our people. You are saying to that mother in Cherry Gardens who is trying to deal with the everyday vicissitudes of life and raising children, place your trust and confidence in me for me to go and serve you and to do better. And that mother is entitled to ask of me, well, why should I do that? What is your record? What have you done in your private life that should be of relevance? And so it was Dr. Hodge herself, Webbo, at the launch of her candidacy, who said that she headed an agency in the U.S. Virgin Islands. According to her, she was at the height of her career, and according to her, a most lucrative career. She left that and came back to Nevis. And when she arrived back in Nevis, she was still the head of the Coastal Zone Management Unit. Again, according to her, there was an investigation. And again, to use her words, multiple members of her team were convicted. She used a language, white-collar crime. You say colloquially, colloquially we don't say stealing, we say thieving. That's really what it comes down to. So the question has been asked of her. You were head of this agency. By your own admission, multiple members of your team went to prison. I know the name Plaskett, for example. There's another gentleman. Several people went to prison for 9 years, 7 years, significant prison terms, who then also had significant monies to pay back to the United States Virgin Islands government. We know the Coastal Zone Management was a federal program. We know that Dr. Hodge, based on an investigative report done by journalists in the U.S. Virgin Islands, called Contracts and Cronies, that investigative report disclosed that there was a phantom company called Elite, and that Dr. Hodge was part of a 4-member panel that awarded that company certain contracts. We know from that report that that company had no business license, no real address, and that its directors and its key personnel were all fake. Webbo, when we look at the report that said that even when her own staff wrote scathingly of the company's lack of performance, she still approved additional sums to be paid out to the company under contract. When we look at all of this, all that we have said is that when you come and you say to the people of Nevis that you want them to repose their trust and confidence in you, you have to make a clean breast of it. You have to be able to say to them, yes, I was there. This is what I knew. This is what happened. This is what part I took or did not take, as the case may be. But she has refused, and they have resorted to this notion that it's a smear campaign. Now, how it is they can go after Spencer Brand? Spencer Brand bought his land in 2008. Private lands that he bought, he and his wife, as a division. He's entitled to invest in his own island. Spencer Brand borrowed money to buy his land. He's an architect by training. He decided to develop a plan for a hotel. The record will show, Webbo, that he received approval under the leadership of Vance Amory at the time in 2014, and under the same Timothy Harris in 2015. Spencer did not become a member of cabinet of the Nevis Island administration until December of 2017, and I have said publicly that Spencer Brand has never once brought anything to the cabinet of which he's a member for any support in relation to that particular project. So when we talk about scandal and we talk about smear, that to my mind is an effort to smear. But I have said to Spencer, it is fair game, because we understand that people will ask questions, and he has come out and made a full explanation. That is an important thing to do. I do not believe that it is too much to ask Dr. Hodge, what did you know? When did you know it? What happened in the U.S. Virgin Islands? Because look at the coincidence, Webbo. When all of this is going on in the USVI, investigation, people being arrested and going to jail, Janice finds herself in Nevis and has not returned to that position since then. So the questions are there, and asking the questions is not a smear. Asking the questions is saying that people who present themselves for public office must adhere to a higher standard and must expect the public to ask of them what it is they would have done, because that demonstrates whether or not they're prepared to hold high office.
Let me go into my final area,
yes,
and then I will allow the public to call. Remember, we got 90 minutes, so taking us to 20 before will be the 30 minutes for the public. Now, Mr. Brantley, you were part of the Team Unity administration. The former first Prime Minister and national hero, Dr. Simmons, came out with a statement a day or two ago.
Yes.
And he was suggesting certain things that are needed to be done for an administration going forward. And one of the things that he suggested was electoral reform. In your administration, as part of the Unity Unity, that cabinet, you also attempted to undertake that. Is that correct?
I think, electoral or constitutional reform.
Electoral. I'm specific to electoral. Okay. And you tabled, when I say you, I mean your administration, then the Unity administration, tabled a bill in Parliament in reference to that, did you?
Well, the bill that we tabled that I can recall was a bill to limit the term of the Prime Minister, which is electoral, yes, but also constitutional reform. It straddles both.
Wasn't there a bill, or was it that same bill that included voters?
There was an attempt, and a bill was drafted to remove overseas voters from being able to vote. It never got to the Parliament because I opposed it in the cabinet.
So that's what I was referencing, and it would have severely affected what we term as overseas voters.
Yes.
I was told by the supervisor of election it is not an accurate or legal term.
We understand the colloquialism. Yes.
And so, had that succeeded, it would have affected the so-called overseas voters.
Yes.
Some of whom are here currently.
Yes.
To vote in this election.
Yes.
And I just wanted to know what was your position on that, in that particular bill, which would have affected some of those same persons negatively, adversely, who you and others are now asking to vote for them.
I feel very proud that as the leader of CCM, I offered my resignation, Webbo, to the cabinet on that issue. I feel very proud that I led a team. We convened a meeting of the PLP executive, the PAM executive, and the CCM executive at Park Hyatt, and we made it very clear. I believe that they had this chap called Peter Wickham, who came, I don't know why he was there, but he was sort of mediating, if you will. And we made it very clear that the CCM under my leadership would not agree to the disenfranchisement of our people. Webbo, let us reflect that in 2011, we had an election in this country where the NRP conspired to remove hundreds of people from the voters list. During the Culturama celebrations, a young lady came and said hello to me, and I remembered her because on the morning of the trial, when we took that election petition to court, she showed up and said she wanted to give evidence. And when we checked the records, the reason that they had put to remove that young woman from the list was that she was deceased. She was dead. And when we offered her in evidence that morning, the lawyer for the NRP, Astafan, senior counsel, said, "My lord, Lazarus has risen." I say that to say that so many people were summarily removed from the voters list, and they just made up a reason. In this case, they said the woman was dead, and the woman walked in and gave her evidence. I went to court, Webbo, and we created history. And it was all about the enfranchisement of people. It was all about the people's constitutional right to vote. And I could not in good conscience, having led that, be a part of any government and any cabinet that would conspire to remove from our citizens living overseas that right.
Mr. Brantley, because the public did not get a lot of details, you said that you offered your resignation.
I did.
Over it.
I did.
What was the given reason why this should have been done?
Why it should not have been done?
It should be done.
That was part of the problem that I had, because under Timothy Harris, the reason that was being offered for the disenfranchisement of our people who live overseas was that that vote favored the Labour Party. And I could not support that as a reason for electoral reform. It could not be because the people in St. Thomas's favor the NRP, for example, that you say, well, let us try and disenfranchise them. No. And I stood on principle, and at the end of the day, they all backed away, and they all backed down, and they decided not to proceed. So my view is that now, and life is funny, now I see people scrambling to say they're trying to get overseas voters to come. And I feel very proud, and I pick up the phone and I call my brother Doc in New York. I say, Doc, are you available? I call Dr. Eustace Huggins, are you available? I call my family members. I call people in St. Martin and in the Virgin Islands. I call Roach and Shark. I say, are you all available? Because these are new vision. And to see that there was a plan to ensure that they could never exercise a franchise in this country, I could not be a part of that.
So your position is, going forward, notwithstanding they're living overseas, they should be accommodated in whatever reform is made.
That is my view, that once you are a citizen of this country, you ought not to lose the character of being a citizen because you happen to live overseas. Because Webbo, all of us have spent time in distant lands. I believe I could speak for you, and I could speak for me, I could speak for my father, and I could speak for a lot of those who are themselves seeking to make policy, that they have relatives in distant lands. And I am never going to be ungrateful, Webbo, because that little money that my father sent from America all those years ago is what kept us. That little barrel that came is what kept so many families on this island. And that came from our relatives in the USVI and in Tortola and in St. Martin. And we have gone to distant lands and made our contribution there. Others have come to our land and are making their contribution here. But a division is a division. A petition is a petition. And we are never to be told that we lose that characteristic and we lose rights because we have decided to move abroad to better our circumstances, or in some of our cases, our parents took us, so we didn't even have a choice. I believe that there's something fundamentally wrong with that, particularly, Webbo, when you juxtapose that against the law as it now stands. That if you're not from here, but you are a Commonwealth citizen and you reside here for 12 months, you have the right to vote.
Mr. Brantley, we got to go now to the phone calls. 1-869-469-1616-1700 for the leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement, the Honorable Mark Brantley. We ask you to formulate your questions, ask your question. As I said, take as little time as possible, but be forceful. 1-869-469-1616-1700. With promise, we've got another 25 minutes or so with Mr. Brantley. 1-869-469-1616-1700. While we're waiting, Mr. Brantley.
Yes, Webbo. While we're waiting, can I just finish the point I was seeking to make? That the thought of disenfranchising our own people, born here, raised here, many having families here, homes here, businesses here, but at the same time our law permits people who are not born here the privilege of voting in this country.
Okay.
I think there was something wrong with that.
Good evening. Good afternoon. You're on the air for Mr. Brantley.
Yeah, Mr. Brantley, I'm calling to find out what's the situation with Development Bank. I got two kids who are studying abroad and they are in limbo right now because they're not getting the approval from the Development Bank for the continual loan for their studies. Could you tell me what's the situation or what's going on there?
Well, caller, you would realize that since the 10th of May, I have been removed from my position in the federal cabinet. So I don't have any direct information that I can share with you. What I can say to you is that it is unfortunate that important matters such as education do not appear to be the priority at this stage for the Development Bank, because it seems that it has become an agent for the politics of the day. What I will say to your caller, hold strain. The election is happening on the 5th. And not only will we, after the 5th, that is Friday, revamp things at Development Bank, but we have committed that no student loan there should be more than 5%. So not only will we be able to assist you after Friday, we'll be able to assist you in a more economical and affordable way for your children. So please hold strain. Freedom Day is coming.
469-1616 or 469-1700. Your question for Mr. Brantley, the leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement, contesting number 9. In the meantime, Mr. Brantley, also while we're waiting our next caller, quickly, you're running in number 9. You've got 2 opponents. Who's going to win number 9?
Well, Webbo, I do not take the awesome responsibility of representing our people for granted. What I will say is that the people of number 9 have consistently reposed their trust and confidence in me. Starting with the by-election that was forced upon us after the untimely and tragic death of Malcolm Gishard. And so since August of 2007, I have been winning that seat by increasing margins. And I believe on the last election, I won by over 500 votes. It says to me, therefore, that the people of number 9 understand that I am with them and that they are and have been with me. And that is for me comforting to know that they have thus far demonstrated that they're pleased with the level of representation that I have brought to them. So the other 2 candidates who are running, of course, we all have the right to contest. I wish them well. I know one of them has been a very strong, lifelong supporter of the CCM and a lifelong supporter of mine, and I'm optimistic that she will continue in that vein. The other gentleman, well, I wish him all the best as well. I'm sure he will come and make his own case when you give him the opportunity tomorrow to speak to you, as you are in fact giving me that opportunity now. But I am confident that the people of number 9 will vote for good representation and for the type of leadership that has demonstrated that it can always be trusted.
Thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brantley. Good afternoon, Mr. Herbert.
Good afternoon.
I am calling you to thank you for looking out for us in the vision. We have been verbally abused and accused. I am wishing you God's blessing, guidance, and protection in all of your endeavors. My ex is for CCN. I don't want no free money. I want the vision to thrive. Okay? All the best to you, and God bless.
Thank you so much for that, and I think that that is exactly what we're saying to the people of Nevis. You know, with all that we're hearing is happening, with all the freeness and with all that is being done, that we must engage in a way that teaches our people how to fish. And giving a man a fish might help him for the moment, but ultimately what we need in our country is a hand up and not a hand out. We need to empower our people, real empowerment, not telling them how you could try and keep them poor in perpetuity, but how you can empower them so that they can take care of themselves and take care of their families. And that, caller, has been the quintessential Nevision spirit. That is how our people have always been. Hardworking, honest, reliable and dependable. People who by the sweat of their brow have eaten bread and prospered. And so I thank you for your call, and I assure you that I'll continue to do my very best for the people of Number 9 and the people of Nevis.
One of the other things, and by the way, if you're just joining us, we have another 10-15 minutes with Mr. Brantley. You can call on 1-869-469-1616 or 1700. This is your opportunity to ask your question, make a comment, and hopefully get guidance and as to how you may want to cast your vote. Mr. Brantley, one of the things that let's go to this caller first. Thank you. Could you go ahead? You're on the air.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brantley. This is Jennifer Philcott.
Good afternoon, Jennifer.
In Number 9. I just want you to know I'm voting for you, my family voting for you, and all in life NRP telling on me they cannot break me.
All right,
So
Jennifer.
I'm still going to vote for you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
and thank you for your support. You have been a tower of strength over the years. I well remember the days when we protested outside the office of the then Premier.
To turn you all against
You were
me.
there.
But I just want the whole world.
Yes,
All right.
sorry. Go
Now, I
ahead,
was simply
Mr.
saying
Brantley.
that this is one of the persons who, all those times, who rain and sun, who stood there with their placards and protested the fact that our people had been disenfranchised. And remember, that is why for me it is so passionate.
Thank you for holding you on the air. Thank you for holding you on the air.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yeah, I'm going to ask our callers, please, once you decide to call, please listen to the phone and you'll hear us. Go ahead, caller.
Hi, Mr. Brantley. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you.
Right. Let us assume during this election, CCMs win 3, PAM win 2, as your collision, that makes 5. Labour win 5 seats, and the present Prime Minister wins 1. Nobody has a majority. What would you, PAM and Labour do? I listen after here.
Okay, thank you very much. That's some math there for you, Mr. Brantley.
Well, I was never good at math in school, but caller, these are hypotheticals that everybody keeps saying, what if? My response to you is simply this. We're going to the polls on August 5th. In Nevis, we're asking our people to vote overwhelmingly for the Concerned Citizens Movement. In St. Kitts, we're asking the people there to vote for the People's Action Movement, because that is the party that we have said we are prepared to align with on the basis that they most fit the ideals and the philosophy and the ethos of the CCM.
Good afternoon. You're on the air for Mr. Brantley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Brantley.
Good afternoon to you.
And how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Well, I'm telling you all the best.
to you, I know you're going to win. Ms. Sheriff, you've done it already, and you're going to do it again. You understand me? Don't matter. We have to listen to Prime Minister, the national hero, Simmons, what he said. I believe everything. So you work, and the Lord is going to bless you.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your words of encouragement.
469-1616 or 1700. Callers, we got a few minutes left for Mr. Brantley. If you would like to call him, give him your support, ask a question, criticize, just do it, within reason. Good afternoon, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, Mr. Webbo. I'm calling in Miss Janice Birkin. I'm calling to tell Mr. Brantley I wish him all the best in the election, and I give him all my blessings. Both him, Mr. Jeffers, and Mr. Eric Evelyn. I wish them all the best, and God's blessings. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you so much, Janice, for your warm words. I believe that you all are going to take good care of Alexis Jeffers. He's in good hands in number 11. The people of St. Thomas's and St. James, I believe, are happy with his representation and the way that he's prepared to stand up for them. And of course, the mayor of Gingerland, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, I think, will do marvelously in Gingerland as always. And so I fully expect, and I'm asking respectfully, the people of 9, 10, and 11 to have those seats declared early for the Concerned Citizens Movement.
Good afternoon, you're on the air for Mr. Brantley.
Good afternoon. Wishing a safe, peaceful, and productive election. Mr. Brantley, if CCM were to win the election, would you be seeking the fair share all at once or periodically?
Well, I think that's a good question. I think once we can establish the framework for Nevis benefiting from its fair share, then we have then to look and see what is in the kitty, what the country actually has. And so that will have to wait then. But one thing I will commit to you, call, and commit to the people of Nevis, for the CCM, this is not an issue that is negotiable. Fair share has to happen because it is what the people of Nevis are entitled to. And I've made that very clear to all who are prepared to listen privately and publicly, that the people of Nevis demand what is rightfully theirs. And we are not prepared to go down a road that we have gone down before of being given crumbs and being told that we ought to be satisfied. The suggestion that we got nothing before, so we ought to be satisfied now, is not an acceptable suggestion for a country that is based on the principle of inclusion of all of our people. And so it will depend on what we meet, but certainly the framework and the architecture for fair share has to be resolved, and resolved urgently upon taking office.
Our callers 469-1616 and 1700 for Mr. Brantley. You have a question or comment or even a suggestion, please call now. We have only minutes left. He has agreed for 90 minutes and we're close to that. Mr. Brantley, the caller who you've referred to as perhaps when they made a question or asked a question or made a comment in terms of the makeup, that is a part of the discussion as well,
yes.
a big part. And some persons are talking about it in reference to, the minority and majority. And you hear people saying, for instance, you indicated, if you didn't say it clearly, that they should, the electorate should give PAM and CCM the numbers, the majority, so that they can form the next government. Is
yes.
that correct?
Yes.
But here's a question. It might be a funny question, but it's real. Why do you need a majority?
Well, because that is a usual constitutional requirement, that
But
you
you-
get a majority. You
but-
can have a minority government, yes. But a minority government doesn't last for very long because it doesn't get a whole lot accomplished. The only way you can have a minority government that lasts if there are members on the opposition side who are prepared to support, particularly in the parliament. Because a minority government can't pass legislation in the parliament. The ayes will never have it if those in opposition are not prepared to support. So a minority government, we had a minority government, as you know, from 1993 until 1995, which eventually collapsed.
We had one in 2020, leading up to 2015. Didn't we?
Well, we
have one just now.
Well, the one we have now, I don't know what you call that.
Good afternoon. You're on the air for Mr. Brantley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Herbert. Good afternoon, Mr. Brantley.
Good afternoon to you.
I'm calling out of station. I've listened and I've listened well, and so far I've kept in touch with all the political happenings. I want to wish you and the CCM party the best of wishes. I am fully confident, I feel confident that the 3 CCM seats in Nevis will be just where they are. That's my firm conviction. All the best and keep the good fight on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. I truly appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. You're on the air for Mr. Brantley.
Good afternoon. This is Carlton Dupont from St. Kitts. I am asking the people in Nevis not to just vote for the CCM blindly. I am asking Nevisians to vote for CCM because along with me, I will continue to fight for what is right for Nevision. The Prime Minister from before Dr. Harris must pay for words like this. Sean Mumu, all Mark want is with money. And the last one is, every dollar goes over to Nevis is a dollar less. Excuse me? You can't deal with Nevisions like this. Mark, this is Carlton. I'm wishing you and the other 2 candidates all the best in the election. And I'm telling Nevisions, we come in with more than 3 seats from PAM. Have a good day.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Carlton. I appreciate it.
Yes, Mr. Brantley. So I was saying that so in leading up to 2015, 93, 95, right? And then currently,
yes,
you have governments that are operating with a minority support. So the question is again, and you're a very learned gentleman, why does one need a majority to run the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis?
Well, you say that the government is operating, but for example, they can't convene the parliament because in parliament they will not be able to get any laws passed. If there were to be an emergency tomorrow, they would need parliamentary approval. They can't do anything.
But the current Prime Minister argues that in the past 3 months, when he had, with this team that he had, he has done more. He has been more effective than when he had the team, including yourself.
Well,
with a majority.
But what do we expect him to say? Because he doesn't have any new members of the team. So if he had a bigger team and he couldn't get anything done, I think it speaks to his competence and not to the competence of the team. Because with all that he now says about the members that were part of the team, he has never fired anybody, he has never reprimanded anybody, he has never done anything. To the contrary, he only decided that he would dissolve the parliament and purport to fire 6 members after we had purported to fire him by writing to the Governor General to say that we no longer wanted him as Prime Minister.
Quickly, while we're waiting for callers, you got another 1 or 2 minutes. You're a lawyer, Mr. Brantley. Some say that you're one of the luminaries, one of the better lawyers around the region. And
used
so
to
on.
be.
Well, still. Did you agree with the opinion expressed by the Governor General?
No. I think the Governor General is demonstrably wrong, and I believe that that is why we now have to put things beyond doubt in some form of constitutional reform, and that is why I agree wholeheartedly with our national leader, Mr. Kennedy Simmons, who said that never again in this country should one person be allowed to fire the majority, not when the majority has made it clear to the head of state that they have a preference for Prime Minister. The fundamental characteristic, Webbo, that any Premier or Prime Minister must have in our Westminster system that we practice is the support of the majority of elected members. That's fundamental.
So that's not clear at the moment?
When you say it is not clear, what do you mean?
But you're saying that it must be made clear.
Well, it must be made clear in the sense that the Constitution must say that in this scenario, this is what must happen. And I agree with Dr. Simmons in that regard, Sir Kennedy, because unfortunately, the Governor General took a view that I cannot act.
Good evening, good afternoon. You're on the air for Mr. Brantley.
Good afternoon, Webbo. Honorable Mark Brantley, I see victory coming, and we will get our fair share once we send you with the other 2 people back to Bastille. Godspeed. Godspeed.
Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Brantley, unfortunately, there's another time for this last part of the discussion. You got the remaining 3 minutes to wrap up.
Webbo, let me start by thanking you, thanking the callers, and thanking Von Radio for the role that it has played. I'm happy at the start you laid out some of the history of the greats like the Honorable Van Samey who have come and sat right here and been a part of the legacy of Von Radio. I think that sometimes we take these institutions...
I don't want to cut in on you, but
yes,
to add how you continued to do the same thing, notwithstanding, because a lot of the times when people find themselves in positions and offices such as yours and as Mr. Amory has, feel somehow that the people are beneath them so that they can come and do this. So while I have you here, I'd just like to say how much we appreciate how you also respond and participate, notwithstanding.
Well, Webbo, thank you for that. I think that's very kind of you to say. But the institution of Von Radio, I think, is important. And I believe when the history of this island is written, that the contribution of Von Radio will loom large, particularly in the context of our politics. We have been here before in terms of being in tumultuous times. We had, of course, the election of '93 and what happened thereafter. We had, of course, the years when we talked about the motion of no confidence not being called and what happened. And we now have this, which many of us would not have imagined. But here we are.
And don't forget the court case and
the
all
court
that.
Case that was more local.
Yes.
But certainly we had that as well. So through it all, I think this institution here in terms of media has provided that platform. So I wanted to say that publicly and wanted to thank you for your own role shepherding this ship for all these years. I feel it, Webbo, an honor to offer myself to my people in their service. I feel that it is important for me to let them know that we do not take their support for granted, and that for us it is a privilege to serve the people of Nevis. I know I can speak for the Honorable Alexis Jeffers, the Honorable Eric Evelyn, and certainly for myself when I say that the ethos, the core principles of the CCM are all about standing up for Nevis, are all about serving the people of Nevis. And that is why we are offering ourselves in this election. We have demonstrated, whether in opposition or in government, that we have never and will never forget what our role is on behalf of our people. Our non-national community, the CCM has demonstrated that we are there for you. Our Nevision community, the CCM has demonstrated that we are there for you. Our brothers and sisters who live overseas, the CCM has demonstrated that we're there for you. We're there for you whether you're young or old. We're there for you whether you support or you don't support. We have done so much in our island. And I believe that one of the reasons you have heard the attacks on me, particularly those coming from the outgoing Prime Minister, is that he understands that in Mark Brantley and in the CCM, he has people who are no nonsense, people who are prepared to stand. Compare that to what the NRP is offering, where they cannot even bring themselves to offer a criticism of the terrible attacks on the people of Nevis. Not even that they can comment on. In fact, when any party running in an election will tell you that if you vote for them, they don't want a portfolio, it tells you that they are applying for the job, but they don't want the work that comes with the job. Any party that for the past 4 years told you that it was morally reprehensible for the same individuals to run local and federal, but now find themselves doing the same, is a party that has already demonstrated they cannot be trusted. Any leader who comes to you and is unwilling to explain to you her role or lack thereof, her knowledge or lack thereof, in terms of a scandal that unfolded 20 years ago in the U.S. Virgin Islands, is not the leader for you. And any politician who gets the endorsement of a former governor who himself was arrested and charged for embezzlement is not the type of individual that you want to lead or you want to invest your confidence in. I ask you to examine Alexis Jeffers, examine Eric, and examine me. We are far from perfect. None of us can claim perfection. I like to remind us all who read the Bible that the only perfect people were Adam, Eve, and Jesus. And so we are not perfect. We have made our own share of mistakes, to be sure. But we are perfectly in love with this island of Nevis, and we are perfectly in love with the people of Nevis. And we will continue to serve them to the best of our ability. And that is what you want in leaders. And we in the CCM offer you exactly that. Thank you. God bless you. And on August 5th, we ask for your support. In number 9, Mark Brantley. In number 10, Eric Evelyn. And in number 11, the hardest working minister, the Honorable Alexis Jeffers. Go out and vote on August 5th. Freedom Day. It is time for us to send a serious team back to St. Kitts to finish the work that we would have started. Thank you. Good afternoon, and God bless you.
The Premier of Nevis and leader of the Concerned Citizens Movement, the Honorable Mark Brantley, we thank you very much for participating.